Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining me today. Welcome to the Weekly Roar. I'm Greg Storch, owner of Lion Enterprise, host of the Weekly Roar, and the founder of a worldwide bartered coaching program called The Helping Hand. I'm a certified professional leadership coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Last week, I encouraged you to embrace your humanness and accept the fact that even as leaders, we aren't perfect. We're only human. So today, I'm going to share some tips on what you can do to recover when you do make those mistakes. What I love about today's Weekly Roar is that this approach can be applied to anything in life, not just leadership. We don't just fail when we're leading. We make mistakes all the time in all the other roles that we play in life too, don't we? I'm not a perfect dad. My wife, Sam, will be the first to tell you that I'm definitely not the perfect husband. I wasn't a perfect son, and I pretty much suck at being a brother. So no matter the role, when you experience that dirty little F word, failure, here are some things that I want you to think about before you just throw your hands up in the air and call it quits. So what do you say we talk about how to be a successful failure? Let me tell you about one of the first times that I made a really big mistake when I was a young sailor in the Navy. I enlisted as a dental technician in the Navy, and after I graduated my school for dental assisting, I was assigned to a ship's dental department aboard the USS Lexington. The dental space was sort of small. It had 2 operatories, a lab, an x-ray room, and there was a patient waiting area. There were only 2 dentists in the department, and I sat chairside with Lieutenant Vernon Sellers. Now, one of the things that they teach us in the basic dental school is a practice called two-handed dentistry. That's when the assistant is handing the dentist an instrument with one hand while retrieving the previous instrument with the other. The really good assistants learned the sequence of instruments for the different procedures with the dentist that they assisted. Well, after a year of assisting Dr. Sellers, I knew exactly how to set up the room and which instruments he used for different techniques. It was like this well-oiled machine. Now, keep in mind, I'm a junior sailor. I was probably an E3 with not much rank, and my boss was a commissioned officer whom, by oath, I was sworn to follow his orders. Well, one day, I sat a patient in the chair, and it was time for one of our standard cavity fillings. I sat the patient, prepared the instrument tray, and in walked Dr. Sellers. He sat down and he started the procedure just like he always did. Instrument after instrument, I anticipated his every move, and I had the instrument waiting for him. And then Dr. Sellers did something he had never done before. He was out of sequence. So I asked him if he was sure he wanted to do that. You could probably guess where I'm going with that. And then I went on to suggest that he should be doing something differently. Uh-oh. I'll never forget the look on his face. He just stopped in the middle of the procedure. He looked up, looked at me over the rim of his glasses. He set the instruments down on the tray, and then he stood up and he started motioning his index finger in a come here motion. Dr. Sellers took me down the hallway into the lab, and he looked at me and said, "Don't you ever correct me in front of my patients or tell me how to perform dentistry ever again. Do you understand me?" Woo. Well, not only was I scared, but I was also really embarrassed. That was a really big mistake. So, what do you think happened? Did they court martial me and kick me out of the Navy? Well, they didn't. Of course not. I didn't get in any trouble after that. But what did happen was that I followed the 3 steps that I'm about to share with you, and I never made that mistake again. Now, that's just one example of a mistake I've made, but trust me when I tell you that I have made plenty before that, and I made plenty after that. Well, here's the thing. We all do. I told you last week that we're only human. We all make mistakes. So when that happens, how do we recover? What's the best way for us to move on when we fail or make a mistake? Well, I'm going to make this super easy process to help you recover anytime you experience failure or make a mistake. Ready? What differentiates good leaders from the not so good leaders is not whether they make mistakes. That's a given. But what differentiates them is what they do afterwards. One of the biggest mistakes that we can make after making a mistake is failing to recognize that we messed up in the first place. Now that seems simple enough, right? We have to fess up. We have to be able to admit when we've made a mistake. It is pretty simple. If it weren't for that dark passenger we call our egos. See, for most of us earthlings, admitting we're wrong is hard to do. Sometimes we'll even argue points over the tiniest things just to avoid admitting we've made a mistake. Think about it. Have you ever gotten into an argument with your significant other and immediately turned the attention away from yourself by pointing out how they made a mistake? It would sound something like this. Hey, you forgot to take out the trash this morning. I didn't forget. You didn't put the garbage bag near the door for me to remember. So, step 1, admit to the failure or the mistake. You gotta own it. To own your mistake means that you don't sit there and make a list of excuses or provide long explanations how it's the fault of circumstances or worse, blaming someone else for it. Now, when we increase our influence, as we grow in our leadership, we assume greater authority. But at the same time, we also have to assume greater responsibility. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, the leader has to own that. Now, listen, probably the second biggest mistake that we make after failing or making a mistake is that we just don't take time to apologize for what we've done wrong. For some reason, we avoid apologies. Maybe because we see it as a sign of weakness or that we might be incompetent. Whatever the reason, get over it. A sincere apology goes a long way in repairing the damage of a mistake, especially if it includes an acknowledgement of those who were directly affected by the mistake. 2 of the most powerful words a leader can use are, I'm sorry. So, step 2, apologize for it sincerely. Okay, here's the last thing. So 3 simple steps, right? What good is experiencing a mistake or a failure if we don't learn a lesson from it? It was Winston Churchill who said, those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it, right? Well, the same can be said for those who make mistakes. Those who fail to learn from their mistakes and failures are doomed to repeat them. It should be obvious that we want to learn the lessons from our mistakes so we don't keep on making the same one again and again. But how can something that sounds so simple be so difficult? One word: pride. Our pride can make us try to justify ourselves even when we clearly know we're wrong or when we've made a mistake. Now, what's worse is that our pride can lead to blame, denial, and ultimately even isolation. That is why it's important for us as leaders, as human beings, to be humble. See, where pride is worried about who is right, humility is concerned with what is right. Humility is the gateway for learning. Approaching a failure, a mistake with humility allows us to learn the lesson from it. So that's the third thing that you can do to help you recover from a mistake. Take the lesson away from it. Making mistakes, having failures, both give us experience, don't they? That's why I always tell people I am highly experienced in failure. But my mentor, John Maxwell, will tell you that experience gives you the test first and then lessons afterwards. Isn't that great? But think about it. If we don't go back and get those lessons from our mistakes and our failures, life is just testing us over and over. We never receive the lesson. We just keep getting tested. Henry Ford said it best when he told us that the only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing. So there you have it. We already know leaders aren't perfect. We talked about that last week. We all make mistakes. So today I gave you 3 quick steps that will set you back on the path once you do experience a setback, a failure, or a simple mistake. Remember, acknowledge the mistake and own it. Fess up. After taking ownership of it, show some humility and apologize. Apologize for not only what happened, but apologize to those it affected. And the last step is to reflect and take away the lesson from it so you don't repeat it again. Nothing will shake a follower's confidence in their leader more than someone who repeats the same mistakes over and over. After all, mistakes are meant for learning, not repeating, don't you think? All right, friends, that's it for today. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. So please feel free to comment below and share your thoughts with the others in the Lion's Den. And until we meet again, remember, be powerful, but stay poised, just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.